Welcome to the Unreal BootCamp lesson on how to set up global entities. Global entities are one of my favorite features of brainCloud. Think of a global entity as a read-only object that each client can request from the brainCloud server. In this lesson, we'll be creating some level data that will be used by the example app in the next lesson. By storing app data in a global entity, you can make tweaks to your game without having to make a patch for each platform that your game is published on. This can save a major headache and a lot of time. In the API reference, let's investigate global entities. Global entities have something called ACL or Access Control List. It's basically permissions for the global entity. There are three options: private, public read, and public read write. The default when creating a global entity is public read. That means that any client can access the global entity but cannot make changes to it. Global entities should not be used to store user-owned data. brainCloud has user entities to store user-owned data. User entities will be covered in an upcoming bootcamp lesson. That's not to say that you can't write data to a global entity. However, writing to a global entity should be kept to a minimum. There are two more features that I want to go over quickly. The first feature is indexing. Let's say your game has a lot of global entities. You can add an index to your global entity for a faster lookup. It should be noted that your game or app should never exceed 1,000 global entities. The second feature is TTL or time to live. Perhaps your game or app wants a global entity to only exist for a certain duration. You can set a time to live value for the global entity. Once that time value expires, the global entity will be destroyed automatically. Global entities are incredibly powerful and very useful. However, you may need more flexibility and customization than global entities can provide. This is where custom entities comes in. We'll be covering custom entities in an upcoming bootcamp lesson. We're ready to create some global entities. Navigate to the brainCloud portal. On the left, click Global, then Global Data, followed by Global Entities. On the right, click the Create button to create the global entity. Give the global entity a type. Then, since all the global entities that we're creating in this lesson will be related, we're going to give them the same indexed ID for a faster lookup. We'll leave the ACL at the default value of public read. Now let's enter some data. In the next lesson, the data that we enter here will be used in the example game's Horde mode. The data will specify information such as the level index, the level's duration, and a description of the level, along with the asteroids and enemies' min and max properties. These properties will then be used by the game spawner to randomly spawn asteroids and enemies based on the values set in the global entity. The global entity data will also detail the number of enemy types. The enemy types are simply the enemies that can be spawned in the level. Finally, we're specifying the starting asteroid and enemies. These are the asteroids and enemies that are spawned at the start of the level. Save the global entity. Notice that a unique entity ID was generated by the server. Another feature built into global entities is automatic versioning. Click the global entity, then click Edit. Watch what happens when we make changes to our global entity. Let's change the duration and the description of the level. Click Save. Notice that the global entity's version automatically incremented. Click the level 1 global entity, then click Clone. Click Meta, then set the level entity type to level 2. Click Data. Change the level index, duration, and description. Next, we're going to modify the rest of the level data to make level 2 more challenging. To save time, the video playback has been sped up. Level 2 introduces two new enemy types. Copy and paste the enemy 2 object and modify it for enemy type 3. Then paste the enemy object again and modify it for enemy type 4. Next, we're going to add additional starting asteroids and enemies. Click Save. Click the level 2 global entity, then click Clone. Click Meta, then set the entity type to level 3. Click Data. Change the level index, duration, and description. Next, we're going to modify the rest of the level data to make level 3 even more challenging. Once again, to save time, the video playback has been sped up. Level 3 introduces one new enemy type. Copy and paste the enemy 4 object and modify it for enemy type 5. Next, we're going to add even more starting asteroids and enemies. Click Save. We're going to add one more global entity. Click the level 3 global entity, then click Clone. Click Meta, and then set the entity type to Boss. Click Data. Change the level index, duration, and description. The starting asteroids and enemies arrays are also changing. The boss is the only game element that spawned at the start of the level. Click Save. On the left, click Design, then Cloud Code, followed by API Explorer. Authenticate. Then from the Service drop-down list, select Global Entity. From the Operations drop-down list, select Get List by Indexed ID. Enter the entity's indexed ID, which is level. You can set the max entities to return. By default, it's 50. We're going to drop ours to 4 since we only have 4 global entities. Click Execute to make the request. There's a list of our global entities with the level indexed ID. In the next lesson, we're going to parse these global entities and implement them in the example game. Requesting global entities by indexed ID is the next lesson in the Unreal BootCamp.